Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2022. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are here at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction for 2022. Now, as you can see here, for the introduction music that we just played, we played some old school Godsmack, some self-titled album. As a little introduction and a little bit of a spoiler, if you will, for this video. So this is my personal list. If you have any bands that you think belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or if there are any bands that belong in your Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, leave your list. And I just dropped my pen. That's embarrassing. Feel free to leave your list of who you would put in your Rock and Roll Hall of Fame down in the comments below. So let's get started. Actually, you know what, before I start, I'm not exactly sure if I'm gonna do multiple parts to this video or not. I'm still trying to decide that, so that's kind of still up in the air, or actually that is still up in the air at this time. But if there is going to be another part to this video, it will come later in the future. All right, so now that we got all that out of the way, let's begin. The first inductee into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for 2022 is Breaking Benjamin. Up next, the next inductee is Godsmack. Up next, we have Motley Crue. This will be their second time being inducted, considering they're already inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, Ohio. Up next, we have Alice in Chains, 1990 through 2002. Now, I believe Alice in Chains is already inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but if I am wrong, let me know down in the comments below. Up next, all right, this one's gonna piss a lot of people off, but I have Hollywood Undead. And here's the thing, I love Hollywood Undead, okay? Leave me alone. Up next, we have Linkin Park. This one was an obvious choice. Of course, rest in peace to Chester Bennington. Linkin Park, man, is one of my all-time favorite bands. And of course, you can't go wrong with the first three Linkin Park albums: Meteora, Hybrid Theory, Minutes to Midnight. And Minutes to Midnight, in my opinion, is kind of an underrated album. There's a lot of great songs, especially on the second half of that album, that really are unappreciated, in my opinion. All right, up next, this is another band that will be inducted for the second time, Metallica. What has to be said about Metallica that hasn't already been said? Of course, they are one of the greatest heavy metal bands of all time. They're one of the big four in thrash. And yeah, they've had a couple of misses in their discography, such as Saint Anger, Lulu, and Death Magnetic. I think those are Metallica's weakest albums, but you can't really go wrong with the first 5 Metallica albums. You just can't. Up next, we have Mudvayne. Mudvayne was one of my first new metal bands, or actually, not one of my first, because Godsmack and Linkin Park started out as new metal, so I can't really say that. But Mudvayne was a band that I did discover in the subgenre of new metal later in life when I was in high school. And I don't think Mudvayne has ever put out a bad album. I think everything they've put out so far is really good. And hopefully we get a new Mudvayne album in the future. That would be awesome. All right. Now this one, I'm kind of scared to say this next induction because Lord knows and I know how much this band is hated. Now, of course, every band has their fan base, and this band that I'm about to mention, God help me, has their diehard fans as well. But up next on the list, we have Nickelback. There, I said it. Don't kill me. Up next, I'm kind of scared to say this one too. Puddle of Mudd. Puddle of Mudd's a band that means a lot to me, man. They carried me through high school, and their songs got me through some really rough times when I was in high school, as did a lot of these bands on this list. And of course, they have songs like Blurry, which is their biggest song. I think that song is very overrated, though. It overshadows like every other Puddle of Mudd song that there is. Of course, you have She Hates Me, Control, Daddy, and no, the Puddle of Mudd's song Daddy is not a Korn cover. What's another good Puddle of Mudd song? Basement. Sunshine is a pretty good song. And many, many more. All right, up next, we have 3 Days Grace. Now, to be fair, the current lead singer of 3 Days Grace, I think, has been getting better and better with each album. And Explosions, that's coming out next month, I believe, if I remember correctly, is shaping up to be a good album. We got 2 very solid singles. We got Neurotic and we got So-Called Life. And I'm excited for the album Explosions, man. I really hope it's going to be a good album. And we'll have to wait and see. But of course, you have great albums from 3 Days Grace, such as the self-titled debut, 1X, which is their biggest album. Life Starts Now. Transit of Venus, I think, is their weakest album of the Adam Gontier era, but there are some good songs on that album. Excuse me. Then you have albums like Human and Outsider. Now, what I'm about to say might be a little controversial, but I think Human is better than Outsider. I'm probably going to get some heat for that, but that's all right. Up next, oh, I can already see people just getting infuriated in the comments. But up next, we have the legendary new metal band. Yes, I said legendary. Limp Biscuit, fronted by none other than the red hat wearing genius himself, Fred fucking Durst. I should have worn a red hat for this video. Now I feel kind of silly wearing a blue hat. But anyway, Limp Bizkit is on the list. Up next, we have Korn, the fathers and creators of new metal. Of course, they were going to be on this fucking list because Korn fucking rocks. Now, just like with Metallica, they've had a couple hit or miss albums. But their first few albums, you really can't go wrong with. Self-Titled, Life is Peachy, Follow the Leader, and See You on the Other Side's got some really good songs on it as well. I know that's their, I think that's their biggest album, because I know it went platinum. I don't know how many times it went platinum, but I know it did go platinum. Up next, we have Seether. Another band that had a great impact on me. Again, carried me through high school, was, part of my angsty teenage years. And, whenever I was pissed off or upset, I would crank Seether to 11 and sing every word, especially songs like Fuck It, Gasoline, Needles, Roses, Fade Out, and the list goes on. All right, up next, I'm gonna get a lot of shit for putting this band on this list. But one of my favorite heavy metal bands of all time, yes, I said all time because this band fucking rocks, Five Finger Death Punch. Now, I know that Five Finger Death Punch is pretty big with the military crowd and the military community. I've had some family members in my family serve in the military, so yeah. Five Finger Death Punch, great band. And I know a lot of people love them and a lot of people hate them. And I know Ivan Moody's been through a lot of shit, but you know what? He's sober now, and I'm glad that he's still around, kicking ass and singing for Five Finger Death Punch. Because to be honest with you, now, I am an All That Remains fan, and I have seen the footage with Phil Labonte from All That Remains fronting Five Finger Death Punch during the time when he came in to substitute for Ivan when Ivan was in rehab. Honestly, I would love to see Phil Labonte feature on some Five Finger Death Punch songs in the future, or even maybe do an album or two with them. I think that would be really cool. And, because Phil Labonte has written some great songs himself with his band All That Remains. So, yeah, I think that would be pretty cool to see in the future. Up next, we have one of the big four in grunge. Same with Alice in Chains. We have Soundgarden. Of course, rest in peace to Chris Cornell. And man, when we lost Chris Cornell, that really hit me hard, man, because my dad and I would always blast Soundgarden in the car whenever he would take me to school in the morning, or whenever we went on car rides. We would listen to Soundgarden all the time. And, some days it's harder than others to listen to Soundgarden, but I know that Chris left behind so much great music for us to enjoy with Soundgarden, Audioslave, and even his solo material was really good as well. And if you haven't checked out Audioslave yet, man, I would highly recommend that you do. It's a super group, and Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine is in that band. And Chris Cornell has written some of the best songs that I think he's ever written in Audioslave, such as Like a Stone, Gasoline, Hypnotize, Set Me Off, Revelations, and many other songs. Now, they did only release 3 studio albums, but Audioslave has never released a bad album. and neither has Soundgarden. So yeah, if you're a Chris Cornell fan or Soundgarden fan and you haven't checked out Audioslave, again, I highly recommend that you check them out. Up next, we have Guns N' Roses. Now, this is a band from my childhood. Appetite for Destruction is one of the greatest debut albums of all time, and it's one of my favorite albums of all time. 30 plus years later, Appetite for Destruction still kicks ass. And I didn't know this for a long time, but I didn't know that November Rain was a B-side to Appetite for Destruction, because November Rain ended up on one of the Use Your Illusions albums. So I thought that was interesting that November Rain was a B-side to Appetite for Destruction. But you learn something new every day. Alright, so we're down to the final two bands. I have Fall Out Boy 2003 to 2008. The first four Fall Out Boy albums, you can't go wrong with them. They're all great. But everything after 2008 is very hit or miss. There's a couple of good songs on the later albums, but for me, I stick to the first four albums just because there's not a single bad song on any of those four records. So that's why Fall Out Boy is getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Alright, last but not least, the last band on this list is Disturbed, 2000 to the year 2015. They've been really solid up until Immortalized. I would even make the case that they've never released a bad album until we got the album Evolution. And Evolution was just really, really disappointing. Outside of songs like Are You Ready, The Best Ones Lie, and I'm blanking on the other song that was on the deluxe edition. That was a heavier track. But yeah. Everything up to 2015, really solid, really good stuff. And that's why Disturbed gets into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year. Or at least my Rock and Roll Hall of Fame anyway. All these bands do, so that's my list, and I will see you guys in the next video. Rock on.